Then they asked him to go with them and carry the news to the empress, and he was glad to do so. The three kings left with the Duke of Macedonia, and it was the noblest embassy they had ever been made to man or a woman. They had ever been made to a man or a woman. They entered the empress's chamber, and she welcomed them with great honor. She took the hand of King Escriano and the King of Sicily, and they sat down in the imperial throne room, with the empress between the two kings. They had agreed that King Escriano should explain their mission, and he began. As we deeply appreciate the honor of your illustrious person, we hope it will be agreeable to you to take a husband. And we beg your majesty not to be angry at what I am going to tell you. Your majesty knows what good condition the Greek Empire is in because of that singular knight, Trnt. You know the rights that his majesty the emperor granted to him, and you know that he left those rights to his nephew, Hippotlis. And so we beg and advise your majesty to take Hippotlis as your husband and lord. He is such a virtuous knight that your majesty will be greatly loved and revered by him, and he is such a knight that will be able to rule and defend the empire, which has been reconquered through so much effort. The empress then said very graciously, Great lords, I realize that you are my brothers, and I trust that you would never advise me to do anything that would be harmful to me or my honor. So I freely place myself in your lordship's hands to deal with me and my empire as though it were your own. They all bowed deeply to the empress and gave her many thanks, and they left, very satisfied with the empress's reply. The three kings went to the Duke of Macedonia. The three kings went with the Duke of Macedonia to Hippotlis's chamber, and he received them very warmly. They told him about the entire conversation they had had with the empress, and how she had agreed to do everything they wanted. Hippotlis knew and thanked them, and he was very happy. They quickly took him to the empress's chamber, and then had the bishop come from the city and marry them. In attendance were the Queen of Ethiopia, the Queen of Fez, the Duchess of Macedonia, and all the ladies of the court. They were all very pleased because of all the hard times they had had, and which they were afraid would continue. The news that the empress had married Hippotlis ran through the city, and everyone was glad. They all gave thanks to God for giving them such a good lord. Everyone in the city liked Hippotlis because in times of need he had been their captain, and he had treated them very well. Soon afterwards, the king of Sicily departed, and the emperor entreated the king of Fez and the viscount of Branches to carry the bodies of Trnt and the princess to Brittany. They said they would do it very willingly, out of love for his majesty and Trnt. The emperor commanded the admiral to put 40 galleys in order so that they would go in his honor, and they were quickly armed and put in order. The emperor had ordered a very beautiful wooden coffin made, all covered with gold, decorated so that it looked like the sepulchre of a great lord, and he had the bodies of Trnt and the princess placed inside, all dressed in brocade, with their faces uncovered so they would seem to be sleeping. He had the coffin put on board a galley with all of Trnt's weapons and flags on it, so that it could be placed upon the sepulchre where Trnt would lie, to serve as a perpetual memorial. And the emperor gave to the king of Fez 200,000 ducats, so that the sepulchre of Trnt and the princess could be made in Brittany in accordance with their great merit. When everything was in order, the king of Fez and the queen set sail, and they had such good weather that in a few short days they reached Brittany very safely. The king of Fez, the queen, and the viscount of Branches, along with the many noblemen and knights, made port in a city called Nantes, and here they were well received and entertained by the Duke of Brittany and the Duchess. They took the coffin with Trnt and the princess, and with a great procession of many clerics, friars, and monks, they carried it to the high church of the city, and it was placed in a tomb held up by 4 lions. This tomb was worked in a very clear alabaster, and molded in fine gold were these words: The knight who in arms was Phoenix, and the lady most beautiful of all, lie dead in this tomb, while their living fame resounds throughout the world, Trnt Blnc and noble Carmenisa. And above the tomb, these 3 verses were sculpted in gold: Cruel love that united them in life has taken their life in great pain. After their death, encloses them in the sepulchre. Words cannot express the mourning that took place in Brittany. There was great mourning over his death by the Duke of Brittany and the Duchess and all of Trnt's relatives when they learned of the actions of everlasting renown he had performed and the great prosperity he had achieved. The King of Fez had large amounts of money given in charity for the souls of Trnt and the princess. He spent 2,000 ducats the emperor had given him very well, and he decided to return to his homeland, for he had stayed in Brittany 6 months to carry out everything the emperor had charged to him. The king and queen of Fez took their leave of the duke and duchess and all the relatives, who were very sad to see them leave. And the Viscount of Branches also took their leave of everyone. They embarked on the galleys and set their course towards the lands of the king of Fez. Our heavenly Father gave them such good weather that in a few days they reached the port of Tangier. And the king of Fez and the queen disembarked with all their people. The Viscount of Branches returned to Constantinople with 40 galleys, and was well received by the emperor, who was greatly desirous of knowing what had happened in Brittany. The Viscount of Branches very discreetly told the emperor about everything that had been done, just as it had been directed by his majesty. The emperor was highly pleased and immediately bought the country of Blnc, which belonged to the princess, for 300,000 ducats, and gave it to the Viscount of Branches as a reward for his works. Then he gave a large inheritance to all those who had married servants of the empress and the princess, so that they would live well and honorably, each according to his station, and all were very happy. Then he arranged marriages for all his other knights. Fortune favored Emperor Hippolytus so much, and he was such a virtuous knight, that he greatly increased the empire of Greece, and he added to it many provinces that he conquered, and due to his great diligence he amassed a very large treasure. He was deeply loved and feared by his subjects, and also by the neighboring lords who lived near the empire. A few days after he was made emperor, he had the Moorish Sultan and the Grand Turk released from prison, along with all the other knights and lords who had been imprisoned with them. They made their peace and a truce for 101 years, and they were so content they said they would come to his aid against the entire world. Afterwards the emperor had them go to Turkey aboard 2 galleys. This Emperor Hippolytus had a long life, but after the death of her daughter, the empress lived only 3 years. After a short time the emperor took another wife, who was the daughter of the King of England. This empress was extremely beautiful, humble, and a very virtuous and devout Christian. The genteel lady bore Emperor Hippolytus 3 sons and 2 daughters, and the sons were exceptional and valiant knights. The eldest son was named Hippolytus, like his father, and he lived his entire life a magnanimous man and performed singular acts of chivalry, which this book does not relate, but defers to the books that were written about him. But the emperor, his father, left all his relatives and servants well provided for before he died. When the emperor and the empress passed from this life, they were very old. They both died on the same day, and were placed in a very luxurious tomb, which the emperor had ordered made. And you may be sure that because of their excellent rule and their good and virtuous life, and you may be sure that because of their excellent rule and their good and virtuous life, they are in the glory of paradise.